just in case I said that. Good morning, though. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being on time. This is anatomy and physiology, and this is considered to be a core course of the health science profession. How many nurses do I have in here that are currently nursing? CNA, LPN, I have a bunch. Great, because y'all can help me teach this course. No pressure, okay? No pressure at all. But all right. And how many of you are actually knowing that you're going into a health profession, whether it's nursing or dental, hygiene? So you know, it's essentially everybody in this class. So let me just briefly tell you about a core requirement. The other requirements that you've had, many of you all have a lot of work experience, have been checking boxes, crossing T's and dotting I's. This is not this class. If you expect it to be, you probably don't want to sign your contract and stay with me. Okay, so just letting you know that. This is a core requirement. This is the foundation of the professional that you are or the professional that you become. You don't learn this class, you don't learn how to take tests in here just for me. All of us know that college is a lot, education's a lot playing the game, isn't it? It's figuring out what that fool in front of the room needs and getting it done and getting through, right? Not in here. This is you. This is your profession. I have worked, and I worked in clinical medicine for 15 years, and I have worked with people who didn't have a good foundation. And let me just tell you, it's easy to spot. So this is you, and I am humbled to be a small, tiny little part of this for you, just a tiny part, because I know that you guys are some of you are working 1 and 2 jobs, some of you have kids, some of you have significant others that shouldn't be significant but are in your life. So y'all have a ton of stuff going on, don't you? But let me just promise you this. I'm gonna, we're in this together, and I am gonna expect certain things, and I will let you know this is sounding really horrible at this point, but I'm gonna let you know that I have probably the least people fail this class than anybody teaching it in the state of Virginia. You know why? Because every day I'll expect you to be here at 9. And every day after the day, you'll be tested somehow. You'll either have a lecture quiz, you might have a lecture quiz and lab quiz at 9 o'clock, or you might have a test at 9 o'clock. And if you aren't here at 9 o'clock, you don't get to take it. It's the lecture quizzes. The lecture quizzes are going to be a significant part of your grade. I'm going to talk to you about what's required on those. I should have started out with something more fun. But anyway, the lecture quizzes, though, are why I have such a low fail rate. And it's because it's making you stay up. You don't even know you're staying up with it, but you're staying up with it. And you're not memorizing. Because the whole thing about our education system is that lectures don't work. I'm saying that, I'm standing in front of the room lecturing, right? But we know you don't learn that way. If you didn't know that, know it now. You don't learn that way. You only learn if you are actively participating in the learning. This is why I have no electronic devices allowed in this class. If you've got your phones on in any way or in any sight of me, turn them off and put them away. I will give one morning after today, no laptops, no electronic devices at all, and then after that one morning, I will drop you from the class. The thing about electronic devices that we know is that they are stealers of time. And you can't take notes even on laptops. People think that they can, but the handwritten notes are you being active, engaged, listening, trying to figure out, taking your notes. You learn better by taking longhand notes than to do on the laptop. That's proof, okay? And also phones. Phones not only distract you and steal your brain cells, they are interrupting the person beside you. And if I had somebody beside me with a phone that was dinging or vibrating, I'm going to tell you something. As a student, I just said, turn that off, right? Because that's just rude. So that won't happen after today. You have to be here at 9 or the quizzes are 0. It's just like a job. I will drop at least 2 low quiz rates, and you can be late or you can be absent twice, and it won't hurt you. They will be 0s. But after that, they're going to start counting. So it's kind of like a job. And so what happens is, usually if you're later absent 3 times on a job, what happens? It happens. So this is a class that I take very seriously for you. Because I still get chill bumps thinking about how much you really need to get out of this class. I'm not expecting everybody to be at the same point at the end of the session, because that's just ridiculous. We are all individuals, right? but I will expect you to somehow try to carve out time in your very precious lives that where time is a coin for you. It really is. You might think money is, but it's time, it's a coin. Do you have any questions so far? You guys picked up a contract thing to that if you decide to stay in class after all that, you will sign and actually give to me. Our syllabus is actually a legally binding document. So I do need you to understand that when you come to this class and you see this is our section. Oh, it is. Oh, it is. Let's see. This is our section of the class, H12. You will see the syllabus, and you can actually read it. So believe me, I use PowerPoints, but I don't read them because they would lose their power and their point if I did. I use them just to keep me honest, okay? But I know you can read, and I expect you to be able to do that, and that's fine. But I'm gonna hit some of the highlights, like no electronic devices allowed ever, and the idea that you have to be on time always, or it's going to start hurting you, and it's going to start hurting you quickly if you're not. So what I would say is get here early, right? Another thing that we do, and this is again why I think I have so few people who have to repeat the course, is that the lectures that you have, and we'll start in just a minute, the lectures that you have, this is what you're responsible for the lecture quiz. So like on Thursday at 9 o'clock, the lecture quiz will only be on what I spoke about. Nothing else, but anything I spoke about is fair game, and you need to know it all. I'm recording these lectures, so if you decide that when we start the lecture, you can't really keep up with your handwritten notes, because a lot of people have never learned how to take notes. But anyway, if you can't keep up with that, you could listen, sit back and listen. Because how many of you are audio learners? Okay, but if you want to sit back and listen, that's fine, and you can get to the lecture later and stop and start the lecture and take your longhand notes that way, that's fine. Anything that's on that lecture quiz that if we didn't talk about it in the prior lecture, I will throw that question out. I don't know how to be more fair than that, right? Because here's the deal. Whatever we do discuss in here, y'all need to own it. And I don't mean own it verbatim the way I said it. I mean understand it. Is memorization learning? It's not. In our entire K-12 is all about memorization. Forget that word, because that is not learning. The thing about memorization is that errors get made when something is memorized. But if you have learned something upside down, backwards, and sideways to Sunday, then you are going to be able to critically think about what that would mean for the next step. And you have chosen a profession that means that they're going to expect perfection. 100%. It's the only profession that expects 100%. It's ridiculous because we're humans, and can we always give it? We can't, but it's expected of our profession. No other profession is that expected from. And it is really kind of crazy because you're going to find out that no two individuals are alike. So we're going to learn a lot about human anatomy and physiology. We're going to learn a lot about pathophysiology. And we're going to realize that the disease in two people that seem like they have the absolutely same demographics, absolutely same thing, the disease presents itself differently. And the treatments, the same treatment would act differently, but you're expected to have 100% positive outcome. Bless your hearts for choosing a wonderful, wonderful career. It really is, but it is, you have to commit right now to being a lifelong learner. And you can hardly keep up. By the way, anything anybody says in front of you, in front of the classroom, don't believe them. Do your own research though, and do that. But I'm just saying that I really stand that. So I don't care if you're in front, they got a pulpit, I don't care what. Don't believe them. Do your own research. Make sure you do it well. But I will say this, it is still taking about 10 years for the newest information that we're learning in medicine to get to the practitioners. By the way, what's a PCP? What's a primary care practitioner? What is it? And make sure if I say something or you don't know it by Thursday, what's a PCP? Tell me what a PCP is, a primary care practitioner, right? Does everybody in here have a PCP? You know that they're like your doctors, right? Is that right? That you go to. So let's think about that. If it's like family medicine, it's taking a long time for the newest data to get to them. And we live in an information world. but it's still taking that amount of time just because of the infrastructure, really, of the system. That's way too long, isn't it? Let me tell you about PCPs. They aren't your primary care providers. Let me tell you who are your nurses. And most of you in here are choosing nursing. Nursing as a medical profession, I'm just going to tell you, I am humbled to be part of you all's journey. I wasn't a nurse at UVA. I was a clinical microbiologist working in pathology and diagnostic medicine. So I was the science part of diagnosing. I respect nurses because they are the primary care providers. But you know what they also are? The executioners. So when those errors get made, and I've heard nurses say this. Oh, I've heard nurses in my class say this, but y'all won't do this in my clinic, okay? And I heard nurses say, oh, we just learned that for a dosage for now because you won't need it later. The pharmacy sends the medicine. The doctor does the order. The pharmacy sends it to you as you need it. Let me tell you who's administering it. The nurses. And let me tell you where the buck stops. The nurses. This is not a crossing a T or dotting an I. This is your foundation. You are going to have to check and recheck and know and own and feel pretty confident about what you're doing with those patients once you are an RN or an NP. Because you are the primary care providers. You are. So this is a responsibility being in here. We're going to try to get everything that we need from here. What is anatomy and physiology, by the way? What is anatomy and physiology? Human anatomy and physiology. What is anatomy versus physiology? What's anatomy? When did you start studying anatomy? Lakeisha? You didn't study. So, okay, some people don't take that. So they said, somebody share, when did you start? Yes.
11th grade.
About 11th grade, you had an AMP, that's great. Yes.
12th grade.
12th grade. All right, well, let me suggest to you, you were studying anatomy before you could actually make the words for the structures. Because somebody would say to you, stick out your tongue, and you would do it. Or they say, pat your head, clap your hands, and you did it. Anatomy is just knowing a name for a structure. You know from the way the structure looks, you know the name for it, and you know where it should be situated. That's anatomy. Knowing form and structure and location. That's anatomy. You started studying that a long time ago. Pat your head, right? This is your head. You know it's supposed to be up here, nowhere else, right? So, okay. If you walked in here today and I had noses on this table and ears on that table, you would have been able to have a name for noses and ears, and you knew about where they should be found, right? That's exactly right. So that's anatomy. It's simple. A significant part of your class, this class, is going to be anatomy, which is the lab part of this class. It's easy. If you don't get 100s, you kind of should be ashamed because it's just going to be about time. Not really. Don't ever be ashamed. But it's about time management. There's nothing hard about anatomy. I will say that in AMP1, it's the most difficult anatomy because in AMP1, this section is where we learn all those bones. And we do. We have to spend time. But is there anything difficult? No, because you're just learning a name to a bone. And by the way, the bones aren't going to be articulated. You're going to have to pick one up and tell me what it is. Okay, so right, but is that going to take some time? Nothing hard, but that's going to take some time, isn't it? Oh, by the way, the reason that you need to know that, because I had a student saying, I will never have to do that. Oh, yes, you do, because you're going to have x-rays, you're going to have things that you're looking at, and unless you're expecting everybody to spoon feed you, you should be able to look at that x-ray and know what bone that was, and know what aspect you're looking at, right? So you're going to want to do that, right? So that's anatomy. I will always tell you when anatomy lab quizzes are. I'll usually give you like at least a week before there's going to be a lab quiz, or usually I'll try to keep that on time. And we will have plenty of time to work on things. But the thing is, if you miss a lab quiz, you must make it up before the next time we meet. Lab quizzes you have to make up. I don't want to give you zeros because I don't drop any. So if you are going to miss on one of those days, and by the way, sometimes you're going to have to miss. You're going to have to miss for things. It's okay. You can do that twice without it hurting. All right. So save them if you save them for emergencies if you have to, right? So that's anatomy. What is physiology? Michaela. Is that Michaela back there? Michaela, what's physiology? Do you want to shout out to somebody? We can do a shout. Okay, shout out. Who wants to help?
How it all works.
How that structure, it's Kathy, how that structure works, how that structure that you just labeled, how it functions. So physiology, ology, study of, right? Study of how something is actually the physics of it, the working of it, how it works. That's exactly right. Does structure, does the anatomy suggest how something works? Do noses look like ears? So you're telling me that the structure is probably different because the physiology is what? That's exactly right. Let's use our common sense, okay? When you're studying things, the bad thing about memorization is that it assumes that you have no common sense. So when you're studying things make sense. That's going to take you while you're studying to do that, all right? Now, I do want to let you know that those lecture quizzes, I've already said, it's anything we talk about, I mean anything, during the previous lecture, just the previous lecture. Those lecture quizzes, you're going to have a heads up on those because what happens is, let's see if I can get this, you are going to have this little thing under modules. Do y'all see this? Under modules that says discussion forums for study guides. This is today, right? Today's lecture. On today's lecture, you're going to hit reply right here. You'll have a box that comes up, and you're going to put in that box, you're going to create your own study guides. I've had students tell me, I wish you'd just give us study guides. I wish you'd make them. So that's what I'm thinking about. So that's what you're going to do after each lecture. Students tell me it takes 10 minutes. They review their lecture notes, then they study them later, longer. But it only takes them about 10 minutes to come up with 10 questions. You put the little answer afterwards, put it in that message box after they hit reply, and they hit, I think it's submit, it's not, it's post. Hit post. Once you hit post, you're going to see other people's. You won't see other people's study guides until you hit that. What is that tool for? It's for you to know whether your lecture notes were complete. Because if you even just glance at Caroline's or anybody else's, you'll think, God, they picked up something. I didn't know that was important, but it probably is. So just review them quickly before the next lecture period. They will always be due prior to the next lecture period, right? Fair? Okay. And then the lecture quizzes are going to be, I'm going to kind of look through those. By the way, even though you get a 100 for doing it, I'm not taking the time to correct those. I don't have that time. I don't. So if you get it wrong, I'm going to say, bless their hearts, oh, So anyway, so make sure that you're correct, trying to make sure you're writing down correct things. I have a class that did this yesterday in microbiology, and I don't know where the conversation got lost, but that person wrote 10 questions from the textbook. Nothing we talked about. Let me just tell you something. That's not going to be on your quizzes. They're going to be what we talk about. And if I didn't talk about it, I'm going to throw the question out. Do you get it? Don't waste your time in here. I know what you need to have as your foundation. I promise you. And I'm giving it to you. So let's work together and try to be smart the way we're working. Okay? All right, great. So that's what you're going to do for there. And then guess what? Every now and then you're going to have a test that's multiple choice. That's going to have several chapters on it. By that time, every few weeks, there'll be a test that's multiple choice. Guess where I get those questions from? Lectures. Lectures. So if you've been staying up with these lectures, you come prepared every day, you're going to do fine on the test. Are you with me? Okay. So great. I do want to just briefly explain to you all about something that is new. And it's new to the VCCS, not just Southside, but to the VCCS. My classes and the nursing, first and second year nursing ADN program are the only ones doing it this semester. But we are doing this. Our resources are coming through digital resources, and it's called Include Access, is what it's called, Access through Follett, the bookstore. It means that you guys are going to be in charge, I think it's $53 or something for this class, in addition to your tuition. And it's through your tuition. So if you pay for tuition or if you have financial aid, it's just going to come out of that. You never have to go to the bookstore. But you probably be getting emails from Follett telling you that you can opt out of it. But actually, for this class, we can't. You can't opt out of that fee. Let me explain to you why. Because this is the first time also this semester, this class has been a hybrid class. I usually get 5 hours a week with y'all, and unlike other professors who, you know, you come in, you sign a roll, you leave. We'll spend every minute of the lecture 3 hours together, right? But we only have 3 hours a week, so some things are going to be through this resource. Let me tell you how to get to it. You go to this little McGraw-Hill Connect. Now, McGraw-Hill Connect is actually a whole learning management system where some people have their whole course there. I don't have anything there except your book and your cadaver thing. But you do have to get to it this way. Now, you go to my Connect section for this course. The first time you do it, you're going to have to put your email and some other information about yourself. And then just do the 2-week trial thing. Not that I'm expecting anybody to drop. I do have access to your address. I can come see you. No, that sounds like a threat. I won't, but I hope everybody, I usually have much people stay. So, but anyway, so you will do that the first time and just do the 2-week free thing, because after that date, some people will drop and they will never have access to it again. A couple might have to drop for whatever reason. But the rest of you, it should just be that all you do is click on it, and the only 2 things you're ever going to use is the book. You're going to use that book sometimes because I'm going to have specified reading. So you would click on this ebook, and the other thing is going to be this cadaver dissection tool, which has a couple of cadavers that are it's a phenomenal resource. That resource is more than the $50-some, just that by itself. Okay. So you don't have to have a hardback book, is what I'm telling you. We did this. I wanted to do this because the books for this class, if you're taking them and y'all probably already know this from your friends, if you're taking them on other sites, they can be up to $400, the hardback books. So this is significantly cheaper, but you've got to be in it. You can't opt out because of the lab tool, the cadaver. Okay? You've got to have to be able to get to this. And microbiology, is anybody in my micro class too? Anybody in here?
I will be next.
So in the microbiology, you can opt out, and you can go to Amazon and buy a cheaper book, right? But because it's not allowed. Okay. So any questions about that? That's how you would. I have too many things up, right? But that's how you would get to that. Any questions about that? Does anybody have any questions from me? Period. I mean, this is good. No. All right. Okay. So, anatomy and physiology. We understand that we are in this room and we're expected to learn all about it in 2 semesters, which is kind of crazy. We're supposed to learn all about the human body, the anatomy, and then also physiology. It does make sense that we study anatomy and physiology together. In some places, you can take those subjects separately, but it makes sense because when we look at a structure of something, even at a microscopic cellular level, when we look at the structure is kind of telling us how it works. Think about if I told you to go into the tobacco field and chop all those weeds out, and instead of a hoe, I gave you a rake. That wouldn't be very good. It wouldn't get the job done, would it? It wouldn't function for you, would it? So honestly, studying anatomy and physiology together is really intuitive, and it's the way that we need to make things work for us and make it make sense. So what I'd like to do just quickly, and I switch around. Like I said, I don't read these, but I do try to make sure I don't forget them. I want to go to this for a second, because wouldn't it be nice, I want to go to this, but wouldn't it be nice if when we're learning human anatomy and physiology, we could actually start like with a baby, right? Like an organism. And by the way, an organism is just an individual of a species, right? So an organism. That would be really, really kind of nice if we could do that. But guess what? We would never have a really good understanding if we did that, because we know that in multi-celled organisms, we know that complex life forms like human beings, Homo sapiens, genus and species, Homo sapiens, right? You're taking this. Humans are complex. And an organism like this one is actually composed of organ systems. Would anybody guess what this organ system is called that they give you a picture of? This is the digestive system, right? So it's the digestive system. So we have lots of different organs within that digestive system. Name some other systems. Respiratory system, nervous system, lymphatic system. Nobody ever says that. So lymphatic system, reproductive system, cardiovascular. So we have a lot of organ systems, don't we? Oh, well, let's start there because that sounds kind of interesting. Wrong. Because you have to understand all the organs that make up that system. In the digestive system, which is a 30-foot tract, 30 feet, all the organs within that 30 feet better be working. If they're not working, what might not be happening? You might not be getting the nutrition that you need. And you know that old saying about you are what you eat? Well, guess what? You are what you eat. You are. We have to eat. Do we get to live if we don't eat or drink? Without water, how long does an average person last in the average temperature? Not long. Yeah, about 3 days or so. Without food, go a little bit longer without food because some of us have more reserves than others. But anyway, we can go a little bit longer, but we have to eat, don't we? Okay, not just for energy, but for the building materials that make us us. We aren't, we aren't holograms. We're actually solid creatures made of building blocks, right? So we have to have that. So you think about your lips. You probably never thought about lips as being an organ system, have you? Or your tongue. Tongues are. I'm going to talk about tongues more than y'all will ever want to. But tongues are really amazing things. And so all of those structures have to be working in the system. To understand an organ system, you have to understand every organ of that system and what its function is. So that means that you need to know what organs are made of. And organs are made of 2 or more tissue types. I want to tell you 4 tissue types. There's only 4 human major categories of tissue types. 4 categories. You ready? Of tissues. And organs are made of 2 or more tissues. And those categories are this. Epithelial, you can Google to spell these. Epithelial, trying to say them very articulate. Okay, epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve tissue. Those are the 4 tissue types. And you're telling me that 2 or more of those tissue types come to make any organ? Is that right? And organs come together to make organ systems. Is that right? And so, okay, so let's start with the study of tissues, which, by the way, is called histology. Histology is the study of tissues. Histology. Histology. Let's start there because that seems kind of interesting, right? Wrong. Because you have to know, well, what are tissues made of? Tissues are actually made of cells, and humans have more than 200 different kinds of cells. Humans have more than 200 different types of cells, and those cells come together. And when I say come together, I mean there's literally a connection and a communication between cells that make up those 4 basic tissue types. I want you to know that a cell is the smallest unit that we know that has properties of life. And now I want you to tell me what that means, properties of life. Tell me what that means. See, I can tell some of y'all haven't had note taking, never had to take notes because you're writing down every word I say, which is so crazy. Cell, equal life. That's all I have to, don't write down. Okay. But you'll remember it. Because then when you do that, you'll actually be able to tune back in and listen. And all you have to do is look at a couple of words and you remember the conversation, right? That's note taking. Right. So anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. So, what properties of life? So what does it mean? What does it mean a cell is alive? Sounds like a pregnant cell. Well, what is living? What is life? Like I'm alive versus this table, right? Maybe not much more, but I am alive. This table. So what is it? What are some properties of life? What does life mean? What is in the cell? I call it animation because it is just like enemy. I just thought of a weird conversation I just had. Y'all would think I was high if I told it to you somehow. So look, but give me some properties of something that's alive versus not alive. What can living things do? What can a cell do that's considered this animation that we call life? They can divide, they can reproduce, life can reproduce. That table, I don't care how much it wants to, it can. Okay. So what else? Move. Actually, movement is part of every single life form that we know on this planet at some point in their life cycle. They can move. So living things can actually pull things from their environment and turn them into usable forms of energy. That's an amazing thing. What does energy mean? Energy is the ability to do what? Work. And to be alive, are your cells working? Let me tell you something about you. You might think you're just, my sister says I'm the laziest human she's ever known. But okay, so you might consider yourself that, but I'm going to tell you something. Every one of your cells, trillions of cells, we can't even get our head around that number. Humans have trillions of cells. Every one of them are working 24/7. They rest a little bit. Sometimes they are not working as hard as other times, but they can never stop working. They can never be without energy, because if they are, they will die. Right? And to get that, they have to be able to bring things into the cell, convert them into usable, and we're going to talk about usable forms of energy, to do their work, because your cells are doing amazing work. It is actually mind-bending what your cells are doing, and all that work that's going on inside of your cells. Do all your cells do the same work? Do your oil glands do the same thing as your sweat glands? No. They know what work they're supposed to be doing. They know what job they've been given, and they do it. And they do it efficiently. Because when they stop doing it efficiently, guess what we call that? Cancer. Disease. Right? But all of your cells, all of these complex cells that have very unique properties that come together to make tissues. What's the study of tissues? And the study of cells, by the way, is CYT. CYTOLOGY, cytology, study of cells. CYTOLOGY. I don't usually spell it. Don't ever ask me to spell, because I hate spelling. Who loves spelling bees? Anybody? But anyway, y'all can always Google stuff and look it up. But cells, they're alive. So let's start there. Let's start with cytology and our exploration of human anatomy and physiology. No, we can't do that, because we need to know what's inside of them. Don't we? I mean, aren't you curious to know what's inside of them? Aren't you curious to know what cells in your body and what organs produce, let's just say, your sex hormones? Well, maybe you're not curious. You should be. I feel like anybody who, even if you're not going into medicine, anybody who wouldn't be interested in science is like, I don't know, not paying attention. You know, honestly, science to me is better than drugs, because it is mind-blowing. And everything that we're discovering, it's like on a scale that is just so steep right now, and it's amazing. So congratulations that most of you guys are going into something like that. But let's look into a cell. Let's go down and look into a cell, okay? Let's look into it. And what we're going to find out about complex life, like Homo sapiens, humans, Homo, genus, sapiens, species, what we're going to find out is that inside of complex cells, there are these tiny little structures that are called organelles, which are not to be confused with organs. These are organelles. And I'll give you a couple of examples for now. And they are going to be the nucleus of a cell. The nucleus is an organelle. Mitochondria are organelles. Rachel. Do you go by Kara? Kara? Kara. You laughed at that.
Yeah, because mitochondria is powerhouse. There's a bunch of memes and stuff about it.
Memes. I love memes. Okay. So, all right. True. That's exactly right. So y'all have heard of mitochondria. You've heard of the nucleus. You had this in 3rd grade, by the way. Y'all started studying this in the 3rd grade. This is sort of like when I think about math. You know, so how many of you feel like you have math phobia? How many of you feel like you have Most people, if they're feeling comfortable, would raise their hand and say, oh, hell yeah. All right. Okay, some of you understand. But the math you need is in third grade that you learn. That's the math you need for life. The unfortunate thing is, and you get fine in third grade. I guarantee you most of you get fine in third grade. The problem is you haven't seen it as it's in. You know what drug dosage is for any medicine, third grade math. The real problem is you haven't seen it. Okay, so anyway, you've seen this. Because I have kids and I remember. They're learning about cells. You know, so anyway, but organelles. Are organelles alive? What did I just tell you about cells? Cells are the smallest thing that are alive. So are organelles alive?
Yes.
No. No. They are not alive. Do they have functions?
Yes.
They have functions, specific functions. Hey guys, why does the nucleus look different? Its structure look different than a mitochondria? Why did they look different? Because they probably have different what? Functions, right? And we're gonna find that out. But they're not alive. Can the cell carry out its function with life without them? No. But organelles are not alive. They are the building blocks, the building materials for cells, and we are going to learn their functions, and I'll tell you why it's important in a second, if I don't remind me to. So, okay, y'all are tired of this game now. But what are organelles made of? So organelles are made of these huge, what does macro as a prefix mean? Macro, large. Micro means small, make sure you know those prefixes. Macro molecules, these huge molecules. And you guys know that this huge molecule, you know from that diagram what that molecule is. Tell me what it is. Oh, I gotta know. I swear I just saw that. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. I love it. All right, so I needed that note this morning. All right, what did I say? Oh, what is that molecule?
DNA.
So what exactly does that stand for?
Nucleus.
Y'all are like the 18. Deoxyribonucleic acid, make sure you know exactly how to spell it on Thursday. Deoxyribonucleic acid, make sure you know exactly how to spell it. This molecule, is it alive? No. No. It's a molecule that we find in the nucleus of a cell, an organelle called the nucleus of a cell. The DNA is not alive, the nucleus is not alive, but inside the cell, they are making the cell come alive. This DNA molecule is called the signature molecule of all life. Why? Do you think? Why do you think DNA is called the signature molecule of all life? Why do you think?
Because it makes us
Everybody's, yeah, I'm hearing all right things. Everybody's DNA is different. It makes us us, right? Is that what you're hearing? Is that what you're saying? I want you to know your DNA molecule. How many of you have cookbooks at home? Do you have really big ones like the whatever those things? Your DNA has never been, or has never been the same recipe cookbook that's ever been created before. Even on identical twins, believe it or not. That's it. Whatever, we'll talk about it. But anyway, your DNA cookbook has never been written before. You have a unique cookbook. And in that DNA molecule, when you open that molecule up, there are recipes that can be found. Recipes to make sebum, which is oil for sebaceous glands. Melanin, which is giving you that beautiful, unique pigment that you might have. Liver enzymes. Here's a recipe for liver enzymes. Open it up later, you would find recipes for to produce certain hormones, testosterone. Here's estrogen. You know, I'm making that up. But anyway, but that's your DNA molecule. Where do you get that DNA molecule? For sexually reproducing organisms, we get it, half of it from one parent and half from another parent. And so you get it from your mom and dad. What's the smallest unit that has properties of life? A cell. So you started out as how many cells did you start out with? You started out as you. Look at you. Trillions of cells. So many that we can see them macroscopically. How many cells did you start with? One. You might want to say that you started as a sperm and an egg, and they got together. But no, you weren't just the DNA from the sperm. And you weren't you, just as the DNA from the ova, the egg. It was only you when those two cells fused into one cell, one recipe book. At that moment, that cell, that one cell that was you, was called a zygote. A zygote. Z-Y-G-O-T-E. I'm never going to spell it again. Okay. A zygote. And then what happened to that cell? What had to happen? Because now you're trillions of cells. So life, we said, can multiply. So before that cell divided, though, what had to make a complete copy of itself? The recipe book. It made a complete copy of itself, and the cell divided, and now there's two cells with identical recipe book to the first one, right? And then those two cells decided to do what? But before they could divide, what they have to do? This recipe book had to copy. In that zygote, and that happened until, that's happening now. I could pull out a liver cell of Tara. I could pull out a liver cell, I could pull out a hair follicle cell, and I could look at the DNA in those cells, and they're identical. The whole recipe book is in all those cells. That's why when you leave, I don't care if what you leave at a site, whether it's from your lips or, fluids or whatever, you leave a cell at a site, you're busted because this is your recipe book and nobody else has it. Do you get that? Okay. I want to let you know something, but I wish I remembered what I'm saying. Okay, I'll do that again. That's pretty phenomenal, isn't it? It's pretty phenomenal that is going on. Nobody else has your recipe. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The moment that sperm DNA met with the ova, the egg DNA, and this recipe book was written, things were already determined. What your hairline would be. As long as you didn't starve yourself or step out in front of a truck. It was even determined when you'll die. Is death to an organism, an individual of a species, vital to the survival of the species? It is. It is. Death in our culture is so feared, it's so whatever, that people make up all kinds of things to deal with the thought of death. But death is an essential part of life for a species. Even within your own body, you will have cells that as they mature, as your cells are dividing, coming trillions, the DNA will open up only to a specific area. And that specific area will dictate that the recipes that are being read have differentiated that cell, and it can only do this thing. It can't go back. It's become, let's say, I keep using the sebaceous gland, it's become an oil gland. It can't now all of a sudden become a testicle. You know what I mean? It can't do it. Even though the recipe's in there, it's differentiated into what it's going to become, right? Do you hear what I'm saying? And all the information for what's going to happen is in there. Now, does the environment play a role? The environment plays a huge role. This is why I tell people, and I wish this would happen at a very earlier age than it happens, because it's really simple. We are the guardians of our genetics. What we are doing, even as developing youngsters, toddlers, adolescents, whatever, is affecting those cells and the DNA, and can affect them adversely. We are the guardians of our genetics. What a man's diet is 3 months prior to producing the one sperm that will meet the ova will affect that individual, the rest of that individual's life. Do you get what I'm saying? So all living species has a DNA recipe book that dictates that species. Now I was talking about humans, right? And do you think of yourself as human? I can't see your name. Okay, so Tessie, do you think of yourself as human? Yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah, think of yourself as human, Ashley. Well, I think of you as about 10% human. Because for all the trillions of cells that you have, and human cells are complex, so kind of example, you have 10-to-1 microbes in and on you. They way outnumber your cells. They're just tiny. You have more bacteria in your mouth than there are people on the planet. And we won't talk about your colons because that would hurt your feelings. That really would. You have microbes that live in and on you, and let me tell you what they're called. They're called your microbiome. I love that. I think that's kind of cool. But your microbiome, which means your garden. Some people refer to this as your normal flora, right? So your microbiome is unique. Did you know, Lakeisha, right? Lakeisha, did you know that your microbiome is actually like when you leave a room, your microbiome can be studied and identify you? That's how unique your microbiome is to someone else's. Siblings and people who live in the same home have very similar microbiomes, which would kind of make sense, wouldn't it? But microbiomes, this study of microbiomes now is fascinating. You learn more about it in microbiology, which was my field of study. But anyway, and honestly, we have so much to learn because the health of your garden is dictating your health. As humans, as that zygote in your recipe book you have about 25,000 genes which are just recipes. I call a gene a recipe for a trait. You have that as a Homo sapien. Our DNA gives us that many recipes that are very, that makes us all unique, right? But the microbes that live in and on you are so diverse that their DNA is 100 times, they have 100 times more genes being carried out in and on you right now. So at best, you're about 10% human, but in reality, you're about 1% human. So get over yourselves, right? You get what I mean? I mean, we really should, kind of. Is that mind-boggling to think about? DNA dictates everything that goes on. Y'all have heard of E. coli, haven't you? Bacteria, have you? You've heard of E. coli. It dictates why E. coli acts the way it does, because it has a unique little recipe book. Those are very simple cell organisms. Y'all have probably all heard of Staphylococcus aureus, right? Staph aureus. That bacteria is very different than E. coli, isn't it? What makes it different is what? Its recipe book, which dictates its shape and what it produces. Yeah, its recipe book. What is its recipe book? DNA. All living things possess DNA that dictates how they're going to function. Is DNA alive? No. All right. So DNA is a huge molecule. Y'all hear about it called a double helix coil. Is that what you've heard? Okay. But this big old molecule is actually made of smaller things, smaller molecules that are made of atoms of elements. Let's write down elements. Atoms of elements. What do y'all know about elements? What can you tell me? What can you tell me about elements? Do you know anything about it? Do you know what the study of elements is called? Chemistry. All right. Awesome. So chemistry is the study of elements. And here's what I want you to know. Atoms of elements are the smallest thing that we know that have their own unique properties. Did I say they were alive? They're not alive, are they? How do we see, can we actually see atomic structure? Can we see that? Can we see these small molecules? Can we see them? Not with our naked eye, can we? We can't even see them with traditional microscopes. What would we have to have? Does anybody know what kind of microscopes it would take? What kind of power magnification it would take to be able to see at this level, at an atomic level? Does anybody know? An electron microscope. An electron microscope. Why do we care? Why do we care about that? Okay. All right, now we can tell you why. Do you guys know that if there was an electron microscope we could be looking through at this, and it's not available, but at this level, you all think of yourselves as being an entity that is separate from even your seat. Feel your butt in your seat. Everybody feeling your butt up your seat. You feel in your hand, your arm, you feel like you're a separate thing. At an atomic level, we're not separate. We're just a blur. The atoms that are in our atmosphere here right now, our air in this room, they're actually interacting. Some of our cells are blurring all the way over to you. We're all joined. We really are. Like I said, you don't need drugs. So, I mean, we just really are. We really are at an atomic level. So y'all might be thinking to yourselves, why do I care? Why do I care about atoms of elements? Why do I care about molecules making DNA? Okay, so DNA is a big deal. Okay, I'll give you that. Right? That's what you're thinking. Maybe. And then these organelles out. Is that I hope you're not really thinking that. And so, but let me say this to you. You're in this class because you want to learn about normal human anatomy and physiology. But mostly you want to care for people who aren't healthy, they're not healthy at the point when they're coming to you guys. Actually, some of them might be close to the end, right? So you all are wanting to learn about pathology, study of disease. All disease is at a molecular cellular level. Can you understand human anatomy and physiology if you don't have a good basis in the molecular cellular level? Can you? Do you think you can understand it? Guess where all treatment is the treatment that's effective. Some treatments we just don't know, but guess where all treatment is targeted? At the cellular level. These molecules at the cellular level. That's right, Kathy. That's where all treatment that's effective, we have to target it. We're going to look back, and it might not be in my lifetime, but it will be in your lifetime, and we're going to think, oh my God, we cut people open. When all we really had to do was do what? Fix them at what level? The molecular cellular level. Do you get it? And we know that now. We just don't know enough yet to not have to actually do that. But this is why, guess where our study of human anatomy and physiology will actually start? Guess at what science? What did I tell you the study of elements are? Chemistry. We'll start there. And you will love it. Do you hear me? How many of you love chemistry? Good. So, and you really will, because honestly, that's where we need to start, and it is not complicated. It isn't. I know you might be thinking, well, I love it. But anyway, when it finally dawned on me, instead of memorizing stuff, to think about, like, how does that work? It's not. So I think you're going to be okay. Believe me, you're going to be okay. But this is where we're actually going to start, is at this level. When I talk about science, what is science? What is science? You all have been in science classes since elementary school. What's science? What does that mean? What's the word science in your own words? What is the word science? By the way, if you give me textbook definitions for things and it's verbatim from a textbook, I'm going to think, bless their heart, they don't know what they're talking about. Because they didn't paraphrase it, they didn't do any kind of turning it upside down, explain it in their own words, whatever. But anyway, tell me what science is, not a textbook definition. What do you feel like science is? What is science? Study, well, the science that's the study of life is called biology. So biology is a science, is a subdiscipline of science. What is science? And you're right. So biology is a subdiscipline of science. What is science? Study of everything? So there are a lot of different sciences, earth science, life sciences, so physics, so you got a lot of different sciences. But no, it's not the study of everything. It's not. There's some limitations in science. Science is a methodical study of our natural world, of our natural world. Did that say anything about beliefs? Leave your beliefs at the door. Because that's, that's a limitation of science. We have to leave beliefs at the door because beliefs tend to make us prejudiced. They do. So we have to leave those at the door because to truly find out about our natural world, we have to be open to what we're seeing. Can we fool ourselves about what we're seeing and what we're studying? Sometimes you
Absolutely.
absolutely you can. So you have to be really aware of leaving any of that because this is just about, and it's only about the natural world. It's not about beliefs. Can you still have beliefs? Absolutely. Dude, have them. But don't bring them into science, right? Because that means that you probably already come in with a prejudice, right? So science is about a methodical way to go about studying questions we have about our natural world. And it's kind of interesting. I almost have never had anybody who can answer what science is, even though they've been in science classes forever. But that's what science is. And then there's sub-disciplines of science, isn't it? So we're under that sub-discipline biology, but we're even in another sub-discipline, human anatomy and physiology, right? Right? So we are looking at just specifically that. So this is what we're going to be doing. And now we are going to have a couple of, we'll kind of go back and I'll make sure I'm not forgetting too much. We understand that the way to study this, it can be incredibly complicated in science because there's a lot of information we already know, and so we have to be kind of organized and thinking about this and how we go about studying it. But I am going to ask you questions about that hierarchy that you just saw. Like I might ask you, what are tissues made of? And you would say what? Cells. And I might ask you, organ systems are composed of organs. And I might ask you, give me a couple of examples of organelles, right? And you could, and I might say, what's the smallest thing that's alive in that hierarchy? And I might ask you, what is a macromolecule? It's a big molecule, right? Now, let me give you 4 categories of macromolecules that we actually will study when we get to that level. After studying elements, we'll talk about macromolecules. Let me tell you what those and you told me from that hierarchy that macromolecules make up those organelles that make up a cell. Did you say that? Mm-hmm. All right, or you saw it on that slide. Let me give you 4 categories. They're the 4 major categories of macromolecules. Y'all already know them. How many of you read food labels? That many of you. Okay, some of you do. All right, so what are you looking for on your food label?
Carbs.
So macro, big molecules, carbohydrates, right? Carbohydrates. What do we call carbohydrates? Sugar. Well, we call them carbs. We call them sugars, right? Sugars, carbs. Okay, so carbohydrates is one. Proteins. Yeah, proteins. Lipids. What do people call lipids? Fats, right? Lipids. And the 4th one is nucleic acids. And if y'all go back and look, that DNA molecule was an example of in what category? Which category? Nucleic acid, right? That fell in that nucleic acid category, didn't it? Those 4 macromolecules are actually the building blocks, the building materials for your cells. Does everybody live in a house or something? A shelter, right? Something that's sheltering them? What's it made of? Wood? Bricks, wood bricks, concrete, I don't know, roofing, Those are the building materials for your home. Well, guess what your cells are? Your homes. What are the building materials you need for cells? Carbohydrates, proteins. They are literally, they're microscopic, so it's hard for people to get their head around it. But they're literally the building materials you need for your cells. So are you what you eat? Yes. We really are. We really are. I say that and all it's sugar. Okay. So just what I say, not what I do. Sorry. Okay. So absolutely, we know that. Let me say this to you. You told me these macromolecules are actually made of smaller molecules that are made of elements. Give me some examples of elements. What are some elements? What is that? What do I mean? Y'all remember the periodic table?
Hydrogen.
What'd you say? Oxygen, hydrogen. Well, not water is a molecule made of two elements, right? So water is H2O. So that's a molecule made of two elements. But elements are those blocks on that periodic table. Hydrogen, oxygen. All right, well, let me give you 4 that make up for all life, even the bacteria, the protozoa, the mites that are living in you and on you, the yeast, everything, including your cells. Let me give you of all life forms, there are 4 that make up about 98% of a cell. 4 elements. Carbon. You can write C, carbon. Oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. You can write their first letters because that's how they're written on the periodic table. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So let me say this to you, Kathy. I could pull your carbon out. 98% of you, I mean, if I pulled 98% of you, it'd be just a little bit that, right? I could pull it out and I could sell the hydrogen and the oxygen and the carbon and the nitrogen to the chemistry lab across the hall for about $3. But the way those elements are working as molecules in you is priceless. Who couldn't want to study chemistry? Chemistry is going to be us understanding that we're all made mostly of those 4 elements, but the difference in how they're playing and coming together is giving us this difference that we see in the diversity of life forms. That's crazy, isn't it? 4 elements. Are elements alive? No. But do we have to understand how atoms of elements come together to make molecules? Because they're making our big molecules, macromolecules, and that with those structures come functions. And if those structures aren't just right, what are we going to lose? Function. If those structures aren't built right, if they aren't made right, we will lose the function. Do you get it? So we study anatomy and physiology together, hand in hand, even at an atomic level. Are we good? Okay. So we would like to start with looking at and we will look macroscopically at what is referred to as gross anatomy. Gross anatomy, I had a student answer that and said it's the really yucky stuff. No. Gross anatomy is actually what you can see with your naked eye. So we're certainly going to do a ton of that. We're going to look at a lot of things we can see with our naked eye. We're certainly going to do that. So there's some other ways to examine a human body, and these are terms you need to know. Inspection, palpation, auscultation, and percussion. These are terms that you would want to know. Our medical fields have gotten so busy and so many demands being put on the medical field now that I think we're getting a lot away from inspection. And when I say inspection, I'm talking about my nurses here to tell you head-to-toe assessments. Head-to-toe assessments are so important, and unfortunately, they're not being done as often as they should be done. There are a lot of things that will give you clues about what's going on with the patient where the sun doesn't shine. You get what I mean? So head-to-toe and listening to some inspection might actually just be looking at body language. How do we mostly communicate? Body language. Most communication that's done between humans is through body language. So as health professionals, we have to be really in tune to that. Because patients think just because they show up, you're brilliant and you're going to be able to figure out what they have going on, right? So it's a challenge. It's always a challenge, but inspection. Palpation is touch. So palpation is touch. We can learn a lot from palpation. Auscultation is listening. So like stethoscopes, listening to lungs, listening to heart sounds, listening. Percussion is when you're tapping on a structure, listening for the echo rebound to figure out if that organ is hollow or maybe it is full and there's no movement, right? There's a saying in nursing, and maybe my nurses will tell you this is true, in nursing that you should always listen before you palpate. Why would that be? Because if you go to palpate somebody's abdominal cavity and they have obstruction, and that abdominal cavity, no vowel sounds, and you go to palpate, could you be harming them? Yes. Yes. So these are terms that you want to know. The cadaver dissections that we will do simulated. They're online. They're actually better than real cadavers, believe it or not, because the real cadavers have been exposed to preservatives that change the tissues. And so the tissues become leather-like and they don't become lifelike. And then also with the cadaver, when you're dissecting as a cadaver, you have one shot at learning. And you can only sense and feel and see and remember so much stuff in a minute. But the simulations of what I call, and I always feel bad about calling it a fresh cadaver that hasn't been exposed, the simulations are great because you can remove the superficial skin. You can actually you can remove the superficial skin and see superficial muscles, like this is the platysma, and then you can go remove the platysma and see the sternocleidomastoid. Well, I can't see it now, but the sternocleidomastoid, you can see that's deeper, and you can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper until you're actually at the skeleton. But guess what you could do if you think, wait a minute, was that platysma superficial or deep to the so-and-so? So guess what you can do on this? You can put it back. No, you can't do that on a real cadaver. But anyway, so this is a great way to learn human anatomy and physiology. Learning that through humans is the best obvious way to do. We also, though, have comparative species. So we will have some dissections that we will do of like cow eyes. You will dissect in here. We'll look at sheep brains. So we'll look at some comparative species too, because they're similar, right? They're very similar, and we can learn certain structures that way. But we have some human samples as well in our lab that we will also look at. So any questions for me so far? All right. So we know that we have a lot of sub-disciplines within medicine, and medical imaging, which is relatively new for us. Medical imaging has really cut down on exploratory surgeries. In my day, when I was just starting out in medicine, exploratory surgery was common, where they would cut you from stern to stem and just lay it open to see, because there was no other way to really see. But now we have 3D imaging with so-called non-invasive medical imaging, CAT scans, MRIs, PET scans, where we really get a pretty good view of what might be going on internally, right? So these are going to be some of the things that we do use. Gross anatomy is what we can see with the naked eye. Y'all got a definition. This text of this is a little bit different from what I want you to know. Cytology is the study of cells, and histology, this is written as examination of cells with a microscope. That sounds like the same thing, right? It's not. Histology, of course, tissues are made of cells, but we're looking at the tissues. And to do that, we really do need to see a microscopic view of how those cells are making those tissues. You get what I mean? So histology is the study of tissues, cytology is the study of cells. Make sure you actually know that. Histopathology. Pathology. Ology is the study of, pathos means dark, dark, evil, really, disease, right? Study of disease. Pathology. If you put histo in front of it, that would mean the study of, microscopic study of tissues looking for disease. Where did we really say all disease is actually happening? At that cellular, at that molecular and cellular level, right? All right, so these subdisciplines of biology, of human anatomy and physiology, these are subdisciplines. There's a saying in medicine that the best family practitioner you will ever have, or nurse or whatever, are the ones that know their limitations. They're going to be the best ones that you ever go to, the ones that will say, this isn't routine. And by the way, a lot of stuff is routine. So it can be handled at that level. But what we know now with the investigation science that's going on and all the discoveries that are going on is that so much information is coming down that the specialists get the information just in their discipline, in their field, and no more quicker than the family practitioner. So what ends up happening is the best family practitioner is going to be the one who says, this just isn't common. Or you have this, which is pretty common, but you have this too, and the combination of those, I think you need to see a specialist, right? over this, so the ones that will send you on. Endocrinology, the study of hormones. Hormones rule and rock your world, and when I say that they rule and rock your world, most people think of sex, which is normal. Humans aren't supposed to be thinking of sex, and it's kind of scary how often we actually do think of sex. Just when we get anything done. So, but the fact is, I'm not talking about that. Well, that's part of it. But anyway, hormones are molecules. So are they alive? No. They're molecules that cells release to turn on or off other cells' function. So they're called signaling molecules. They're controlling everything from your skeletal health to your skin, the health of your skin, to your calcium levels, to every single thing hormones are controlling your world. They really are ruling and rocking your world. So hormones are signaling molecules that are communicating molecules. It's pretty amazing that we have trillions of cells and they're all communicating pretty well with each other right now, right? How are y'all feeling? Okay, right? That means that your hormones are communicating with each other. Your tissues are all doing what they need to be doing, right? All right, so I talked about comparative. If I don't mention it, do you need to know it? No. No. If I don't say it, you don't need it for the lecture. You don't. I want you to know about, in Mesopotamia, 3,000 plus years ago, you see, look how crazy they were. They were using herbal drugs, salts, and just physical therapy. How crazy is that? Is it? No. No, it absolutely isn't. Unfortunately, with this new age medicine, we're discovering so much at a molecular level, we kind of got away from what we should have been doing too all along. And now we know medicine is not just about treating disease, but it's also about being proactive and preventing disease, right? So did you all know that if you have a physician, you probably wouldn't have a physician or a nurse practitioner, it's always me, but if you had one that was even 40 or over, it wasn't required that they took a nutrition class. They didn't have to have a nutrition class. Isn't that mind-boggling? And by the way, now health professionals usually only have to take one nutrition class, and that is mind-boggling too, because we are learning so much. That's almost like a new science. Anybody thinking that they may want to be a nutritionist? It is almost like a new science, and that field is really in demand now. So there's tons of stuff being discovered. Probably when most of you all were in high school was when the food pyramid got thrown out the window that we had learned for 50 years, right? 5 decades. We had learned about this food pyramid that everybody needs to eat, certain thing, how the plate looks. Now we know there's 13 at least different types of diets depending on things like your ethnicity, your blood type, depending on a lot of different things. It's not just a one-size-fits-all with nutrition, is it? And certainly if the patient, depending on whether they have been compromised in some way, their nutritional needs are going to change, aren't they? So nutrition is just hugely important in understanding. So nutrition, physical therapy, meditation. Meditation. I need to practice it. Okay. Does anybody practice meditation in here? Nobody practices. No? Do you sometimes? Okay, listen, we all need that. So this sounds crazy, but it's not. This is coming back and we're understanding all this stuff is vital. I do want you to know that Hippocrates is considered the father of medicine. The father of medicine, Hippocrates. And this is why anybody going into any health field, getting a license to do something, takes, you hear about this ethics code called the Hippocratic Oath, right? Hippocrates was the one who said, there's cause and effect for disease. And we need to ask enough questions to understand what's going on, because there is this cause and effect relationship with disease. And this, unfortunately, didn't get listened to for another 2,000 years. But it's absolutely true. And he says to do no harm, and that's really, really true about doing no harm in medicine, trying to do no harm. Cause and effect. So, people don't get disease just because of the color of their skin, or because of the side of the railroad tracks socioeconomically that they were born on the side, or the kind of sex they're having. You know, they don't. In the early 80s, I was working ID at UVA when our first patients were coming in with AIDS. I remember the first patient that died at the University of Virginia with AIDS. I remember it very well. In this country of Americans, we are 5% of the world's population, but as far as consumers, we're consuming over 25% and waste and pollution and whatever. So we're doing way more than our share of bad stuff, right? But we're only 5% of the world's population. I'm just going to talk about this one disease, give you an example of how we haven't come as far as we should. And we're getting better. Things are better. It's never been a better time to be alive as a human right now than right now on this planet. So even though news and maybe me, whatever, sounding kind of depressing, it has never been a better time to be a human. Lifespans are longer than they've ever been, right? Lifespans, there's less famine, there's less war, there's less disease. So celebrate that. Don't buy in to all the negativity. Just celebrate that, okay? But it doesn't mean we don't have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. In the early 80s, and y'all look this up, please do. In our little 5% of the world's population, what we think is all about us, this disease called AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. You would want to know what AIDS stands for, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. It is an infectious disease caused from a virus known as HIV, which stands for human immunodeficiency virus. AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Acquired means that you can catch it. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, is the etiology, the cause of AIDS. In the 80s, we were having our first cases of this very devastating kind of illness. People were dying from things they shouldn't have been dying from. They were dying from infections that no one gets sick from. Pneumocystis, pneumonia, you don't have to write on this down, but I'm just telling you the story. They were dying from things like this. And we're thinking, what is this? What is the cause? What is causing this? And then at 80, we found out it's a virus. It's a virus. So people in this country thought, well, the people who are getting this, it hit in this country, just our country, not anywhere else in the world, but in our country, it hit the homosexual male population first. So because it hit that population, do you think that a lot of politicians were sending money to the research to figure out what was going on and to save some people? We weren't even in the top close to being part of the research. In every other country, it was heterosexual. And other countries were trying to lead the way, thinking about what is this pandemic that's going on, and people are dying of things they should not be dying from because their immune systems are shot. What is this? I hate to say it, and I'm ashamed to say it, we were not even close. In this country, and at UVA, we had a set of triplets. I got 2 minutes, I'll tell this story. We had 3 little girls, identical twins, identical triplets that were born to, and their dad was a doctor at UVA. Their mom stayed at home with them. Those triplets were born, and when they were born, just like in a lot of multiple births, they sometimes need fluids and need blood. So a unit of blood was split between them. And in 80, we didn't even know what was causing this crazy disease. We didn't have a way to test blood. That unit was positive. I watched over the next 10 years those 3 girls die. I watched them. Like I had children thinking about those little girls. Those little girls were so discriminated against that they weren't allowed to go. They didn't let them come into a daycare. One of them died as a toddler, but the other 2, the Corvette, they weren't allowed to go to Charlottesville. Was progressive. In Virginia, Charlottesville's progressive, right? They weren't allowed. In this country, in the 80s, neighbors were burning their neighbors' homes down because the kid that lived next door, who was a hemophiliac, had a blood clotting disorder and had to get human blood clotting factor A, had to get it from human donations, had gotten AIDS, and their neighbors were scared of it. That was happening more than once. The discrimination and fear that came from that was horrendous. Hippocrates tells us, and was telling us then, there's cause and effect. You need to understand. That virus doesn't care what kind of sex you're having and who you're having it with. And it doesn't care if you're in a closet upside down, having sex. It doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care. It doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care what color your skin is. It doesn't care. It's a virus. It is spread a particular way, which we needed to learn, not be afraid of it, but learn about it. And then understand how it is transmitted, understand how to help people to understand how it's transmitted, understand all of those things, and then also then look for ways to treat. The good news is now, and it took too long, now people who are HIV positive status with treatment can live normal lifespans. That's big. That's huge. That's progress. But, the human condition of prejudice and, whatever, we're working on it. We're all working on it. Do y'all have any questions for me? Y'all know what you have to do before you come in here Thursday. You've got to do a little study guide. Don't do more than 10 questions. Let me tell you what happens if you do more than 10 questions. I'm going to figure out this, I am the laziest person you'll ever know. I'll figure out that Sarah's will put every single thing I said as a study guide, so I'm going to put a fake one, and I'm just going to look for Sarah's because she's going to have my notes for me. Don't do that. Do 10 and stop. But do study all of your notes, okay? Those lecture quizzes are about 10 questions, and so if you miss one thing, it's already done. So you'll get used to them, though. You really will. Y'all are good? Everybody's good? If you're in the same class, I'll take your contract.